Hey everyone, I finished watching the next VR Troopers episode, The Secret Admirer. I was kind of not looking forward to this episode after seeing the title because for VR Troopers, the titles are kind of telling. Like, you can kind of tell from what kind of title the episode has if it's going to be like kind of a goofy episode or a more serious toned, like adventure focused episode. This episode is okay. Nothing really amazing. It's another standard VR Trooper episode. It works. It's fine. If I was a kid, I would have probably really liked it. So anyway, it starts off, Caitlin receives flowers, and, my notes, hate writing the word receives for some reason. It's so strange. It keeps changing. Like, I'll write, like, something with an S at the end, and it'll change it to a D at the end. What's that about? Like, I can't use a word in the present tense? Does present tense not exist anymore or something? Do they have a meeting about this? Moving on, back to VR Troopers. She's receiving flowers from who she thinks is a secret admirer, but it turns out to be Grimlord. Of course it is. Grimlord has come up with a new plan involving flowers, but we don't know the full extent of it. All we know is that there's something called the Flower of Evil, which is something I'll talk about later. So, Caitlin's talking to Ryan and JB at the newspaper place about her getting flowers from a secret admirer, and Percy comes over and he takes credit for the flowers, but then gives himself away when he starts, having violent allergies to the flowers. There's no way he could have sent them because he's completely, like, useless around the flowers. It's a dumb little bit, but it's a little better than how they've been using him in some of the past episodes. So later on, Ryan and JB see someone deliver even more flowers, and they think this is a little suspicious. So they follow the delivery guy. They follow him out to this alley, far away from where any flower shops are. Looks like a back alley near a warehouse or something. So Ryan is still suspicious about this. He decides to test things out. He goes up to one of the guys and says, "Hey, can you deliver some flowers?" And they're like, "We don't do deliveries." And so he keeps talking to them, and eventually they reveal that they're Skugs. One of the Skugs tries to sneak up on him and, like, hit him in the back of the head with something. Surprisingly, like, intense for a VR Trooper episode. They don't usually go super far with the violence. Usually it's, like, martial arts against the Skugs. They don't usually have real world violence, like something imitatable like that. So anyway, JB and Ryan fight off the Skugs. Oh, and there's a new song in the background, which is kind of cool. Um, okay, so they defeat the Skugs. They go back to warn Caitlin, but they're too late. The flowers have done something to her. She, like, glows green, and then it wears off. Okay. They take her to Hart's lab, and they scan the flowers, and then there's a really weird bit where, they ask if Jeb can match the flowers that were used on Caitlin against these, like, flower scent samples that Hart somehow has, or something. He has this little machine that I guess can produce flower scents? Alright. Kind of weird. Anyway, then there's also a weird line from JB or Ryan, I don't remember who, saying the toxin won't affect Jeb. How do they know? They don't even know what kind of flower it is. How do they know it won't affect Jeb? That was really weird. Like, is that just there to cover up, like, a plot hole or something? Did somebody notice, oh, hey, how do they know that the flower won't be dangerous to Jeb? Oh, we'll just stick a line in where they say it won't be dangerous. That doesn't really help. That, like, that doesn't even really cover anything. If anything, it just draws more attention to it. It's like in the Ninja Storm episode I just watched, when they're coming back from the Megazord getting damaged. Hunter's saying to Cam, "What about the Thunderzords?" And Cam says, "I haven't been able to access them." Like, why not just forget about them for now? Because if they hadn't brought it up, I might not have, like, cared so much. But the fact that they brought it up and gave such a stupid, like, excuse for why they don't have them just blew my mind even more and made me want to, like, rant about it for a while. Back to the thing, because it's not really that important. It just goes right by, whatever, who cares? It was dumb, that, whatever. Jeb finds out that, oh, it's the Flower of Evil. And it made me wonder, is that its, like, actual horticulturally recognized name? Are we sure there's not, like, a Latin name for this weird-looking flower? It feels like they could have easily come up with, like, a dumb, like, technobabble name for the flower better than the Flower of Evil. The name Flower of Evil just doesn't really fit for VR Troopers. VR Troopers, to this point, has usually been a pretty tech-based season. Things usually have, like, technical explanations, even if it is just made up, like, sci-fi science, but like the term flower, like the name Flower of Evil would fit far better in a fantasy show like Power Rangers, where they have had like silly fantasy like flowers with superpowers. Back to the thing. Caitlin begins to glow and suddenly disappears. She finds herself in a dungeon surrounded by a force field, and Icebot's there gloating to her about the plan because he likes to talk, I guess. Anyway, it's really unclear. Was her teleporting to the dungeon an effect of the flowers? Because everyone acts like it was. It's really weird. Whatever. Back to the thing. Let's see. Da da da. Okay, so Hart tells Ryan where he can find a fresh sample of the Flower of Evil so they can make an antidote. So he goes by himself because JB's not in the footage. And let's see, there's some monsters guarding the flowers, and so there's a big battle with a couple of the monsters. One of the monsters just disappears. I I don't know why. So whatever, one of the monsters disappears, he's fighting the other monsters. Oh, and one of the monsters is Toxoid. He's a kind of recurring monster who shows up once in a while. He doesn't have like the most interesting design for his body, but his head is really weird. He's got like a pretty generic looking body, but then his head is like this shriveled up, like kind of raisiny looking face, and then he's got like a dome over it with it looks like water in there. So is he some kind of amphibious monster who needs water? But the thing that really stands out about him is his voice. It reminds me of Starscream from the original Transformers. In fact, I went to the VR Troopers Metal Heroes wiki and looked up the character. Turns out, no, he does not have Starscream's voice actor Chris Latta. He is voiced by Dave Mallow, who I believe was Babu in Power Rangers, and I think Dave Mallow also did the, like, today on Saban's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the blah 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 blah. He's that guy, I think. I think he did a bunch of other voices for Power Rangers, but I don't know off the top of my head. Like, I'm pretty sure he was Babu, but I don't remember who else specifically. So anyway, he does a great Chris Latta impersonation. I'm wondering if it was intentional. Like, did he happen to see Transformers and think, oh, that's a cool voice, I wonder if I can do that. If it's Toxoid, it gives him kind of a funny, personality. In the fight, there is a kind of clever little thing where Ryan tricks Toxoid into smelling the flowers of evil. He says, those aren't the flowers of evil anyway, those are the flowers of power. And so Toxoid is like, oh, flowers of power? And he picks one up, smells it, now I'm invincible! And apparently it does give him a power boost for a while before he crashes. Yeah, it's really sudden. Like, he is really strong, but then, plump. Were these flowers cocaine? Did these come from Mighty Mouse? Anyway, Ryan defeats Toxoid and uses that chance to get the flowers. He gets the flowers back to the lab, and then JB goes to rescue Caitlin. So I guess all this time he was just standing around waiting? Why didn't he go while Ryan was getting the flower? This is so dumb. Like, I don't know, maybe they didn't want to break up the pacing of Ryan's fight, but that's usually how they've done things in VR Troopers. They'd cut back and forth between the troopers, but not this time for some reason. This one time, they decided JB has to just sit this one out. And then Ryan sits it out because they need someone there when they get Caitlin back. What, does Hart think that they're going to die? that Caitlin's going to be the only one that gets back or something. Back to the thing. JB rescues Caitlin from the force field. He fights through Ivar and Pollenbot, who's this flying cotton ball jellyfish thing that can also turn into a glowing blob. Sure, why not? So anyway, JB defeats them, and then Ivar retreats, and they don't show it. He just kind of disappears, and JB's like, huh, he must have run off. Great way to explain the lack of available footage there, I guess. So anyway, they get Caitlin back to the lab, she's all better, and then Grimlord, back in virtual reality, is like, what was it? I have failed once again against the VR troopers, and it's all my army's fault. And then Toxoid off in the background says, thank you, sir. Which is pretty funny. I like that bit. That's a funny bit. Toxoid, like, kind of redeems this whole, not very good episode just because of that. So anyway, at the newspaper, Percy tells Caitlin that he got a call saying that if he wanted to impress her, he should get her this, and he pulls out a steak bone wrapped like a flower. And, yeah, Jeb called Percy and told him this, and he believed him. Okay. Very dumb. Anyway, Percy asks Caitlin out on a date, but she declines his offer because she has a big story to cover. And then Percy's like, man, I never get any big stories to cover. And Caitlin's like, oh, well, you can do mine. And he's like, oh, awesome! And then she gives him a gas mask and says that it's an investigation of a problem with the city's sewer system. Dive in! And they give him, like, waiter pants. And then he trips over Jeb, the end. It's an okay episode. Perfectly average for VR Troopers at this point. The pacing is weird, especially at the end. When Ryan goes off, JB's apparently just sitting around waiting at the lab, doing nothing, while Caitlin is potentially, like, being murdered or something. In fact, I don't know why they don't try to kill Caitlin. Like, they just keep her in the force field. They don't come. There's no reason. Like, did they want to drain her energy first or something? They could have easily added in something like that. Whatever, anyway. Grimlord's plot actually makes sense, using, like, a poison flower to incapacitate the troopers. And, when he gives up at the end, this is something the writers are getting way better at in VR Troopers, where his plots, early on, his plot would be thwarted, and then he would just give up for no reason. He could easily keep doing what he was doing, but he just doesn't. Now, though, it does make sense. In Nightmares, the Dream Master was the linchpin and everything. He was the one who could do what Grimlord needed him to do for his plan to work. With Dream Master destroyed, he can't do that anymore. In this episode, the flowers, the troopers have an antidote for it now, and even if he were to use flowers, it's not like a monster. He can't just, like, send the flowers to attack them. They would have to, like, actively go up and smell the flowers, and chances are now they're going to be far more suspicious of any weird-looking flowers. So, yeah, it makes sense that his plan fails and he just gives up here. One of the weird things that with Troopers that I've noticed on this rewatch is Percy. The writers really don't seem to know what to do with him. Most of his comedic bits are really forced here, but they do seem to have learned from the past episodes that for him to get some kind of comedic comeuppance, he has to be in the wrong to begin with. But then that leads to him just kind of being a jerk for no reason. Or just acting weird for no reason. I don't really know how exactly him taking, like, claiming that he sent the flowers to Caitlin is supposed to work. Like, all I can guess is, did he have a crush on Caitlin and he sees, oh, there's a secret admirer, that's a threat to a potential relationship between me and Caitlin. I have to get in between that before something happens and I lose her. But he's never really displayed any interest in Caitlin any more than any other, like, female character in the show. Or maybe he did, I don't know. I'm not good at detecting that kind of thing. Moving on. The Skug fight at the beginning with Ryan and JB fighting the Skugs. There's some amazing choreography, really clever scenes there, and it made me wonder how much of it might have been handled by Koichi Sakamoto. I know VR Troopers was one of his like first assignments, and that was like how he got discovered. Basically, he was brought in from VR Troopers to Power Rangers, and from Power Rangers he went back to Japan and did Sentai Kamen Rider, and I think he's done Ultraman also. Just a ton of really cool stuff. And it all started in VR Troopers, so it's really cool to be able to see the seeds of that, if this was even him. It does remind me of his kinetic style, so maybe. Um, oh yeah, Pollenbot, the floating cotton ball jellyfish thing. Why is he named Bot? This episode is so weird with names. We give, like, a technical name to this weird fantasy monster, but then a flower we give a weird fantasy name to. When it's supposed to be, like, a real thing. It's in a database of just normal flowers that Heart has. Why is Pollenbot named Bot? There's nothing robotic about him, even remotely. It's a cotton ball jellyfish. It floats around. It turns into a glowing blob. Oh, and also, it doesn't have anything to do with pollen. I guess they just figured, oh, it's a flower episode, so give this thing a flower-based name. But also add bot to the name for no reason. The name... The monster is being called Bot in VR Troopers is such a weird thing. I don't know if that was like... Was that a mandate or something? The monsters had to be called Bot for whatever reason? I don't know. I don't know what the reason is. It's just a very strange thing. Oh, and my notes jumped way up for some reason. That's weird. Where is, do. Okay, da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Okay, nothing else to say about this one, so... Okay, episode? Not a whole lot to say now, so I guess that's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. See ya.